S.t.a.l.k.e.r Call of Pripyat is a direct sequel to S.t.a.l.k.e.r 1, is a third game in the series and takes place a few years before S.t.a.l.k.e.r 2. You figure out how that works. And it's probably my favorite one of the first three, for one simple reason. It is at last a video game. Where Shadow of Chernobyl can only be generously called a computer program, and Clear Sky is so broken you can only call it a malware, Call of Pripyat appears to be a fully fledged video game that people can play, even. Many quality of life improvements and gameplay adjustments were made to make this one into a much more seamless and enjoyable experience. So today we're going to crap on all of that by trying to beat the game with the most useless gun that they give you in the very beginning. It's time to find out, can you beat S.t.a.l.k.e.r Call of Pripyat with only the PM pistol? Like and subscribe, etc. And let's begin. This time around we play as Major Dekterov, who comes to the zone on government business. After the big fireworks at the end of Shadow of Chernobyl, the center of the zone was ripe for the taking, and the military dispatched 5 helicopters as part of the Operation Fairway to break into the new territory and establish dominance over the most delicious spots. All 5 of them then promptly crashed into the ground. Our goal is to investigate the crash site and find out what was the literal downfall of the operation, as well as figure out what to do about it. To do that, Major Dekterov has to wash off his clown makeup and join the ranks of free stalkers, as they're the only allies available this deep into the zone. The intro says he came here with 2 weeks of supplies, but opening your inventory you can only see 4 pieces of food, so I guess he doesn't eat much. He at least did pack a Kalashnikov, which we'll be tossing into an anomaly as soon as possible. Actually, there's a good reason to sprint towards the nearby fire trap, as there's a scripted event where a stalker will try to go in for an artifact and lay down for a nap in the boiling grounds.
Help me, stalker!
Offering a medkit to the poor guy scores you a bear detector, which is so much better than the echo beeper, it's not even fair. While here, we ask the locals where the nearest base is, and they point us towards Skadovsk. A rusted shell of a ship, now having its insides gnawed at by stalkers and bandits alike. We won't be taking a direct route to the place, however. Call of Pripyat takes a different approach to quest design than its predecessors. Instead of many general areas, the game pretty much leads you through with the main quest, like in previous games. This time we get 3 main locations that the player is free to explore however they see fit. There's still story missions and side quests, of course, but the vibe very much is, here's 5 helicopters, how you gonna reach them is your problem. But also the helicopters are already there and waiting, along with pretty much every other relevant thing, which means that a lot of quests can be completed before ever acquiring the actual tasks for them. For example, this dredge station is glowing for some reason. The local stalkers would like to know why, but we don't need their opinion before we go check it out. Especially since there's gravity anomalies here that usually have an artifact somewhere in the water. A couple of mild parkour leaps lead to the cabin of the tugboat, where a steering wheel is blasting caramel dancing. Looking at it in the inventory explains that it is a sort of a half-converted artifact item. Unfortunately, the only property of which is to wildly emit deadly levels of radiation. But not according to this guy, who catches you on the exit from the boat and says that the thing in the boat is the only artifact that can cure his sickly friend. Sure enough, they probably won't be sick after they die of radiation poisoning. You can actually give him the artifact, but that just means he gets to be the guy who presents the artifact to the local trader instead of you. And since his story is obviously fake, I pretend to not have the wheel yet and walk further on, and right into an ambush. I guess it pays to have a few deathly sick friends to cover your back. Instead of giving up my radioactive garbage, I try to simply leave the conversation, but the guy with the Kalashnikov is surprisingly good at killing me. Still, I'd rather not have to murder a guy over some poisonous scrap metal, so I just safe scam the fight until I can pinpoint exactly the trajectory to run to avoid getting perforated. At Skadovsk, the local trader, Bandit, is all too happy to receive the half artifact he already sent 3 other guys for, and I am not in a hurry to tell him what happened to those 3 guys. I also buy all of his canned food for super secret future reasons, and sign up to help a guy named Gauss with the disappearances sweeping the stalker population. The people are shook over the corpses drained of their blood showing up, and the situation isn't helped by one of the hunters, named Danila, also having gone missing. Obviously, bloodsuckers are the primary suspect, and Gauss wants to investigate one of their roosting nests. But my main goal here is to poke at the mechanic and bring my vet fart of a gun to the fullest of its potential. Cardan, bless his soul, can actually add a couple improvements to the Makarov right out of the gate. But most of the upgrades are not possible since the guy has no tools to actually install them with. There's 3 tiers overall: the basic, advanced and calibration tools, and all but the final set are actually available without progressing the main quest and reaching Pripyat. In fact, one quick circle around the Zaton swamp will bring us both basic and advanced tool set and also finish most of the side quests. So we will start with the burnt farmstead location and see where it takes us. Well, for one, it immediately takes us to the poisonous caves below the farmstead, since I basically fall into the crevasse, having forgotten that it's even there. But this is actually quite lucky, since in this cave there's a unique corpse of a stalker named Barge, who also has a PDA with a diary entry about his fight with the technician Cardan and their friend Joker. Just so happens they were arguing about going into an anomaly, and it looks like whoever thought that they shouldn't go into an anomaly was right, because Barge is very dead. On the upside, I get to keep his upgraded Sunrise outfit, and also I find a mid-chunk artifact in the same fruit punch he died in. We're actually gonna hang on to this one for future quests reasons. At the farmstead there is a field of flame spout anomalies, and I certainly interrogate them for an artifact as well. But my main reason to being here is a different glitch in reality, just off the cliff on the side of the farm. This is intended to be revealed to you by the local nutcase called Noah, if you ask him for help. We'll ignore him for now though and pretend we found this on our own. Even without the guy, obviously the teleport anomaly is still there.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
So I easily am transported almost exactly to one of the helicopters I need to check out in Zaton. This one has crashed due to the engine failure, but the surviving personnel got swiftly gobbled up by the snorks living in a nearby cave. More importantly, we are now across the map, and from here I plan to venture directly north, knocking out every side quest available ahead of the time, so we won't have to come back and deal with it. This is where the game design behind Call of Pripyat really shines. Every location on the rather large map comes pre-baked with some sort of an adventure, which yes, means that you can plan up an optimized route and beat the game 100% in no time. Which I actually won't be doing today. I'm not here to speedrun, nor am I really here to show off. I am here because my GPU is not strong enough to handle recording STALKER 2. First stop on our tour of the swamps is the Mercenary base in the waste processing station. They're not super into me invading though, but their laptop can be sold for good money. There's a couple ways you can break into their operation, and this time I choose the stealthy pipe going over the ground and pretty much right to their gaming PC. Since it can't run STALKER 2 either, we'll be selling it to s.t.a.l.k.e.r, the information broker. The mercs still spot me and are quick to promote me to warmer food. Which means I have to at least try and fight them off with only my PM pistol. But I can't really seem to do any damage before they shoot me down, especially since some of the mercs are wearing the exoskeleton armor. I can still luck out and run through the base with my new laptop, but it's a sign that we should invest into better protection as soon as we can. In the meantime, I am going to invest these 15 cans of questionable meat into a different mercenary camp so they let me run around their building. The second mercenary base in Zaton is blissfully unaware of my squabble with their friends, and can be bribed into being my friends as long as I bring them some food. That's why I wasted that much money back at Beard's bar. But before I can even strike up a conversation, an emission begins, causing the whole group to retreat into the backside of the base and mysteriously disappear. No, they don't die in the emission. It hasn't even started properly yet. They actually vanish from the game without a trace. This means I can snatch the advanced tool set from their little camp, but also means I have to immediately hoof it to a different location, since their little refueling station doesn't actually count as a valid emission cover. The spot I went to instead is the small brick building at the Iron Forest Anomaly Cluster. Another chopper crashed here, and the black box within it actually comes with a detailed map of the area, which will give me a significant discount when asking the local pathfinder to escort me to the next location. There's also the electric anomaly and a couple of poltergeists guarding the place, which I seriously hate dealing with. Something about aiming at the invisible mutants with a PM is already annoying, but even if you fight them, it's pretty hard to tell whether any of your shots land at all. So I try to ignore them as much as possible and leave for a nearby gas station. A massive ravine runs through it, and it swallowed up one car in particular that has a stash full of loot in the trunk. The steel case with goodies is actually part of a fun side quest where one of the stalkers in Skadovsk asks you to bring it to him. If you do, you get a little interaction with the guy where you two divvy up the loot from the case. But you can also never give him the case back and just drag it to Kardan, who will crowbar it open for a small price. Not the most honest way of doing it, but hey, in this version of reality, we don't even know whose case it is. What I also somehow forgot is that the cave is full of snorks. So we're in trouble since the mutants are not very susceptible to PM ammo. Headshots do really good, since snorks are essentially just horse girls galloping around, but actually hitting one in the head is really hard, what with how they're on all fours all the time. Also, I haven't really killed anyone with this pistol yet, and I'd hate to start now, so I try and run out without engaging the mutant violence. Trust me, there will be plenty of that in a moment. The exit from the caves leads into a claw anomaly, populated by gravity bubbles. There is a jellyfish artifact that usually spawns here and confuses the heck out of me, since it actually spawns in the bent cave somewhat above the ground, only accessible via parkouring. Too bad I now have to climb all the way back up the hill to try and meet up with Gauss, and also pay a visit to the s.t.a.l.k.e.r anomaly. The rendezvous spot offers only a bloodsucker corpse, but Gauss phones in soon enough to tell me he found the whole nest of them guys in the nearby Krug antenna complex. Before we come to his help, however, I take a stroll around the s.t.a.l.k.e.r routes to try and find a skeleton wearing a gas mask. The corpse belongs to the other friend of Kardan's, Joker. His PDA has an entry about their squabble and how Joker thinks that an artifact can be found in the branches of the anomalous tree. And he's right, I get a kolobok in the leaves at the very top. His upgraded gas mask is also handy for my future exploits, though most anything in this game is better than the gear I started out with. And also, according to the little cutscenes whenever you investigate a helicopter, Makarov doesn't actually wear any helmets or masks in the first place, apparently on principle. The Krug antenna complex is a nearby ironically square building, where Gauss meets me to tell me that there's probably a bloodsucker lair in the basement. What his plan is, for if there actually is one, I have no idea. Everyone wants to go look for a bloodsucker lair, but nobody actually wants to find one. There's no way the two of us can clear one out, especially with me only using the water gun. Just like he says though, there's two of the mutants currently in the building, and the game does really well with how spooky their introduction gets. But it's not currently in my interest to just let the scripts run the way they're supposed to. So I run downstairs to annoy both of the inhabitants and try to get Gauss to kill them for me. After all, he actually likes using his Kalashnikov, as opposed to me, who left his in a burner anomaly. The trick works for one of the monsters, but the other one Gauss seems to ignore completely, leaving me to struggle for my life. In a way, he played the Uno reverse on me here. In a different way, Gauss, you asshole, start shooting! Much dying commences, since the PM pistol can only really kill a bloodsucker if one chokes on it. Until I find this one fallen shelf that is perfectly sized for my little body. While hiding in the center of it, I am just about out of reach for the monster's attack and can't keep on shooting to my heart's content. Once the monster is down, Gauss cracks open an elevator shaft leading into the extra level of the basement, which is all we need him to do here really. This lower level is inaccessible unless you let an NPC open it for you. There's a second door he lockpicks for us further down the line, past a few blood-drained corpses. The Gauss notes that the local victims seem different from the ones he saw before, cut open with claws more brutally. That's when Gauss opens the doors and we see a horrifying sight. A small army of bloodsucker monsters packed tightly into a room, thankfully napping and unaware of our presence. I love this encounter with burning passion. Crawling through the monster's sleeping room feels tense and dangerous, knowing one wrong move will lead to you and your partner being torn apart in an instant. It's also a chance to see the monsters up close and really admire the revised model as well as the unique sleeping animation added for the game. It almost makes you feel like you maybe shouldn't be blasting your flashlight in their faces. almost. Past the nap time, there's a drop into a pipe leading to the anomalous swamp with another helicopter, where Gauss entrusts me with reporting the s.t.a.l.k.e.r situation to the wider Stalker populi. In the meantime, he has a different lead to follow up on, and it's a good thing he does, because I really don't want him to stick around for what's about to unfold. See, there's a whole lengthy quest here where you can examine a bridge back by the waste processing station, and after climbing all over the construction, find a heavy can of toxic gas that you then have to drag all the way back here to plug into the ventilation system, drowning the lower level of the building with poison, and purging the Lair for good. But I really don't feel like coming back here later, so we'll just take an alternative route. Circling back through the complex, I return to the s.t.a.l.k.e.r polycule bedroom, and, having deeply considered my chances, open fire at the mutant closest to the exit. This obviously wakes up just about everyone, and I swiftly become a community juicebox. On the second attempt, I manage to escape with my life, but with barely any damage done to the monster. My original plan here was to blast one of the creatures and then retreat to the little corridor nub across the hall into the pipe. That way the monsters who can't jump can't actually reach me, and having no ranged capability won't be able to deal damage to me at all. Unfortunately, this isn't going to work, since slipping out of the area seems to completely reset the positioning of the beasts, where they are teleported back into the sleeping quarters and return to their mimi state. This actually still would work well with a different gun, since I would be able to take a shot at the nearest mutant, run back to the pipe opening, and repeat that ad infinitum, slowly whittling down their health one by one. Or, toss a grenade in there a few times. That also would solve the situation. But since the unupgraded Makarov pistol is basically only doing them acupuncture damage, this strategy will take longer than the Dead Game Stalker video marathon, so we have to find a different approach. I crawl through the room back and forth a few times, brainstorming for any ideas, until I find that the server shelves standing upright can be jumped on from the stairway leading into the room. And since the Bloodman cannot jump, I can stand there raining death from above, as if stealth is optional for this mission. It takes a bit of time, but I get a whole lot of success standing up there peppering the crowd while the swarm below me desperately tries to figure out how to do a cheerleader pyramid. But my celebrating proves to be premature, since with a couple of the spaghetti face monsters still running around, I tremendously run out of bullets. Thankfully, with most of the gang now identifying as corpses, it is very possible to parkour to my sweet spot and leave the establishment. Much as it hurts me to know I'll have to come back here later. Before running back to Skadovsk, however, I dredged through the anomaly marsh on my way to the helicopter and decide to hit up a sawmill further up north. It shouldn't be a surprise that you can grab a set of basic tools there, but the trick about that is that the place is occupied by a small army of zombified stalkers. And while sneaking past most of the slow, disoriented enemies proves no problem, actually picking up the tools is scripted to attract all of their attention for some reason. And it's not that their batch is a hard enemy, it's that, need I repeat, I have no bullets. Best way I found to outmaneuver the shambling corpses is to leap off of the building and towards the fences. Not really anything I can do to dodge their shots more efficiently though, so the only way here is to block off the line of sight by hiding behind the building and hope to luck out and only get shot a little. At this point there's not any places of interest I can hit up without NPC help, but also my inventory is painfully overloaded with stuff. And no wonder, back on Skadovsk, turns out I've been dragging around 20,000 rubles worth of the artifacts. The only ones I keep for myself are the jellyfish for radiation protection and Kolobok and meat chunk for super secret story reasons. The money is good enough to put down a payment for an exoskeleton suit at Nimbles, whom I am quite surprised to see since I shot him dead back in the shadow of Chernobyl. But more importantly, I give Kardan the 2 sets of tools, his dead friend's old phones, and 2 bottles of vodka, bringing him to the fullest of his potential. The PDAs don't actually do anything here except unlock the good ending for the guy, but I like to think that it enchants my PM with Kardan's blessing, adding 2 vodka damage to every bullet. The only improvement I still can't add to the glorified paperweight is the 25% fire rate increase, because it's a tier 3 upgrade and needs calibration tools from Pripyat to be installed. But yes, this means I swap the PM's caliber to the 19mm ammo and buy 100 bullets from S.t.a.l.k.e.r, which is not much, but bullets tend to increase in numbers as you shoot them. Case in point,
Sultan wants to see you.
Listen up.
Sultan wants to see you.
The Skadovsk bandits are powering up an attack at a nearby stalker camp located in a second crashed ship, Shevchenko, and they need an extra gun to help with the assault. Little do they know, that extra gun is going to be a goddamn Makarov pistol, and also aimed right back at them. I immediately rat them out to Beard, and he informs the Shevchenko stalkers, though the final nail in the coffin will be me going along with the bandit plan, only to tune on them last minute. The choice doesn't actually lock you into either scenario, by the way, and you can't just let the attack play out without interfering at all. Or you can do what I like doing and take out the whole squad on your own before they even board the ship. A well-timed grenade can easily resolve this problem, but since I'm locked into the pistol, I actually struggle quite a bit here. But at least this helped me discover that loading back a save here triggers the first guy I killed to load in standing up and looking directly at the sky for some reason. I'm actually quite embarrassed by how bad I do here, because while the difficulty is locked on master, these guys have some pretty shoddy equipment and also flub their one advantage of it being nighttime, since they have a mission marker on them and are visible on the minimap. Anyway, Shevchenko is not too far from the antenna complex, so yes, I did only take this mission because I was too lazy to walk all the way back for my rematch with the Bloodsucker nest. Now, the boat shootout didn't actually score me any extra ammo, but turns out I don't actually need much, since there's only 2 face-suck enthusiasts left in there to begin with. The Gauss bullets make quick work of that, and I hear the satisfying beep of the PDA letting me know that yes, this is indeed a valid way to complete this mission. Just for the record, the documents and the gas canister for the alternative route are still on the collapsed bridge, and I'm pretty sure they can be sold to s.t.a.l.k.e.r, though I can't be bothered cleaning that up. What I do need to follow up on is the Bandit business, since the raid on Shevchenko opens up a further mission to break up a deal between the mercs and the bandits. I'm only really interested in this one because Beard gives me a Veles detector, which is nice enough. It's basically a minimap that shows you the artifact locations straight away, but even it can be made better, we just need to get a quest from s.t.a.l.k.e.r that only unlocks after this one. The stalker friends meet me at the deal location and we hide and watch from afar. Turns out, the crooks are actually doing the business with the traitor from the duty faction, who's been secretly selling off the group's weaponry for money and artifacts. If the guns were to actually fall into the hands of the Zaton gangs, they would have no problem chasing the stalkers out, and we can't have that. It's hard to tell if I contribute here much with the pistol, because the stalker squad seemingly does just fine on their own. But I did get a kick out of this one mercenary, who apparently forgot to actually turn hostile. The dutier's PDA will fetch a nice price when I go to the Yanov train station, since that's where both duty and freedom made base in this game. But first I gotta visit the one spot I still haven't, cause remember, in this game everything is something. And look at that, there are these weird crane docks left unexplored. The location itself is actually quite unremarkable, unless you have already visited the stalker camps and have gotten tied up in a quest or two. We're here, however, for the small shack to the side of the docks. Usually it's locked and inaccessible, but today something is very different. There is a corpse laying right next to it that wasn't there before. A loot on it makes the body of little interest to the player unless they pick up that the name of the deceased is Danila. The one hunter Gauss told us has disappeared recently. This also means the door into the building is now open, and entering it reveals Tremor, the medic from Skadovsk, who is clearly busy and it's not polite to interrupt. Nah, Tremor is standing there operating on what's left of Gauss. The sheriff got suspicious of him and caught the good doctor in the act somewhere off camera. Tremor's PDA reveals that he's suffering from hemoglobin addiction. Yes, he's hooked on drinking blood, on top of already looking like a vampire. What's weird is that he's been like this even before he came to the zone. Unfortunately, radioactive camping did nothing to combat his vices, and the man soon found himself faking bloodsucker attacks on stalkers whom he would disappear and drain of their delicious sauce. And though I am sympathetic to his situation, I have to shoot Tremor before he beats me to it and renders this video demonetized. Unfortunately, this side quest cannot unfold any other way, and Gauss and Tremor both die unless you just ignore the situation. In which case I guess Tremor continues to disappear people off camera until eventually he and all of Skadovsk get eaten by the nearby Bloodsucker Lair. In the ending slideshow, I mean. We don't actually get a mutant invasion like that in the game proper, unfortunately. Also, completing this questline gives you a detective achievement, which is hilarious if, like me the first time I played this, you only found Tremor by complete accident and haven't so much as noticed that Gauss has disappeared. Ah yes, detective. You know, I'm something of a detective myself. But with that done, I can't really think of any more business to do in Zaton at the moment. And I gotta get moving as S.t.a.l.k.e.r gives me the task to deliver 3 Veles detectors to the scientists stationed over on Yanov. Oh, and also there's the
Here's
main
to a
quest
good
with the
day's
helicopters
work.
still to sort out, but who cares about that? Thankfully, with the military maps I found in one of the choppers, the guide can take me there with a serious discount. The second major area of the game offers its own set of quests and adventures, spread around in similar fashion. For example, in the basement where they keep the main character, you can meet Trapper, the hunter who gives you advice on hunting mutants, and a couple of missions to go with it. But the mutants are actually already there, save for one very special one, and you can knock out the elimination tasks before ever talking to him. Besides, while we've certainly killed a few things in this playthrough, we've been always followed by a list of allies, or we're cheesing the crap out of the enemy's pathfinding system. It's prime time we gave the PM a true run for its money. So for that one person in the comments, I am now going to tackle the Burer tunnel nearby the Jupiter factory. No, Nimble hasn't delivered my exoskeleton yet, why do you ask? If you're unfamiliar, Burers are one of the 2 new mutants Call of Pripyat adds that weren't actually new. Kind of. The code and models for Burers, chimeras and even Bayoon cuts were all already in the game files for the games as far back as Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. And though the modders made a short work of adding the mutants back into the game, it's always been pretty clear that the monsters weren't not up to the standards. Well, since the third Stalker game is essentially made out of 90% recycled material, Burers and Chimeras were revisited, finished up, and finally let loose on the zone for the release. I joke, but actually having fuller versions of these monsters really made this game feel like a love letter to the rest of the series, along with making this part of the zone feel much more dangerous than the familiar parts from Kodon to Limansk. So chances are, this railway tunnel would be the first time a player who never gotten into the mods sees the new enemies. In short, Burers are telekinetically capable humanoids, wearing black capes and possessing a nasty attitude. And I say in short because, I mean, look at them. These guys are barely a meter tall. But underestimating our short kings would be a grave mistake, since despite what you might think, these monsters are not just a messed up reskin of a poltergeist. Along with the ability to eat heavy objects, Burer come with a plethora of attacks that levitate them to one of the most powerful creatures in the entire zone. For one, when shot at, they can put up a gravity shield to absorb your bullets, making an unobservant stalker waste all of their ammo. The creature can't actually do anything else while casting it, but that's why there's 2 of them in this goddamn tunnel, and they're all too eager to pull an assist. Speaking of pulling, a Burer can also home in on your gun and rip it out of your hands. It might seem like a very mild problem, since picking it back up will put it back in your hands right away. But in reality, this trick often makes you abandon whatever cover you're using, or even get smacked in the face with your own gun. And you will want to be using cover, since along with the poltergeist copy-pasted abilities, Burers have 2 attacks that I can never describe as anything but Giga Drain. Sending a wave of telekinetic energy at you, Burer can either exhaust your stamina to where you're unable to run, or, much worse, sap a major chunk of your health like it's nothing. The telltale sign one is locked in on you are the glowy swirls capturing your character, and if you can't notice them in time, breaking the line of sight with a creature is imperative to your survival. They can't drain you to death right away if your health is full, but they really like to send a finishing brick at your head immediately after. So that's what we're dealing with here, using only the PM pistol, where the better choice would be a grenade launcher. Actually, the gun proves itself superior right out of the gate, as it is a pistol and is therefore immune to the pull it out of your hands trick. What also helps is that despite the tunnel being basically a big echo chamber, I managed to sneak up on one of the Burer bros without alerting the others to my whereabouts. The poor guy appears to then panic and leaves himself open for a couple of shots to the back of the head, which seem to remove most of his health. And then I just need to stay patient through all of his shamanic finger puppets, while keeping an eye out for the turbo gravity charge. So the one of the 2 goes down rather painless compared to how this fight generally goes. And it becomes abundantly clear that I've simply lucked out with that one, when I recklessly charged his less absorbent comrade, only to be flattened with a well-timed gravity ball. Once I start playing much more carefully and use the locomotives in the tunnel for cover, the fight goes on fine if slowly, which is not sitting well with me at all, because at every moment I am bordering on jumping out, getting all in his face and force-feeding him these bullets. You'd think I do these challenge runs because I'm good at being patient and extremely methodical, but I'm actually just very stubborn and obsessed over dumbest ideas. And also because it's funny. Overall, I only die once in this encounter, which gotta be the best it ever went for me. Now, with the blood christening complete, I want to get back to my detector quest before we move on with the main plot. One Veles is actually just chilling in a stash in a cabin of an excavator near a zombie-infested village of Kapachi. There's also 2 quests I can knock out on my way there. Kill the bloodsuckers roaming in the swamp and grab some materials from the cement factory. The bloodsuckers are a breeze compared to the Burer tunnel, but especially because I can pull the exact same crap I did with the antenna complex and climb this one branch where the mutants can't actually reach me. They end up just running in circles while invisible. And the invisibility doesn't do them any favors anyway. Not only are the monsters marked on my minimap as part of the quest, their running is very visible thanks to the ripples spreading over the water surface. Really the only reason this fight took me so long is because I can't aim for shit. The cement factory is a bit more tedious, but much more important. The goal here is to pick up every piece of electronic components across every level of this building. The trick is to get all the way up on the roof and go back down, thoroughly searching every story for pickupable stuff laying across desks and workstations. These can be brought to the local mechanic, Nitro, to score a good discount on his services. Not that the PM pistol is expensive to repair, but I'm farting through my suit durability like it's going out of style. And this mission is actually more convenient to complete by first acquiring the task, since you get a PDA message every time you pick up one of the components. However, you get a different one when you pick up the last one. That way, you actually know when the task is finished and aren't stuck worrying you missed something. But the final detector is one we'll have to work for extra. None of the traders seem to sell them yet, and the one guy who should have them in stock doesn't even have a trading interface yet. That guy is Herman, the scientist in the bunker by the Yanov train station, but he refuses to take me seriously until I grow a set of stronger psi-protective armor. Just to spite him, I approach the stalker for hire Gary and talk to him about leaving for Pripyat. The guy genuinely believes he can find his way to the abandoned city, but is locked into an important contract with the scientist and can't leave until that's done. The only 2 artifacts he has left to provide for the contract are Meat Chunk and Kolobok. And won't you know, those are the exact 2 artifacts I've been keeping on my person this entire time for this exact reason. Gary actually won't be here as soon as the next time you visit the bunker. He just gets up and leaves. But with my psi protection upped quite a bit, I return to Herman and ask for that job. They actually have a whole squad of stalkers doing odd jobs for them. I'm only here because the psi field they've been studying has already half melted their brains, and they won't go any deeper and risk a prolonged exposure. The nice part about this mission is you don't actually have to walk to the place. The squad will take you there via fade out if you ask to. The couple zombified stalkers in the tunnel pose little resistance to me, much less to the quartet of the stalkers I forced to deal with them because I just ran by. The anomalous tunnel has a wandering orb lightning sparkling through it, and there's some stationary zappers in the pallets. Really, it's nothing that an insistent medkit spam can't fix. The psi field turned out to be emitted by a unique half artifact called Altered Insulator. A piece of the power line that was left in the anomaly for a little too long and now is, unfortunately, floppy. Like, this is an upsettingly flaccid piece of equipment. But I guess that's why I'm paid the big bucks. Picking up the item seems to disperse some of the psi radiation, but it also triggers a rather unique encounter. As the door back opens up, I see the stalkers from the scientific squad collapse on the ground, mumbling some distinctly yaoi lines about how there's a controller and he's inside of them. The mutant proudly walks in through the train car blocking the tunnel exit, and he's all too quick to start fondling my corpus callosum with his camera zoom attacks. The coolest thing about this mission is that if you take too long to dispose of the monsters, the stalkers that came with you will turn zombified and also start attacking you. But you can actually rescue them if you don't hurt them back and instead focus on unplugging the controller. The Makarov pistol is woefully short-ranged in this situation, and cutting down the distance is complicated by the camera grabbing. It stops you dead in your tracks and also makes you put away your weapon. But after a couple rather embarrassing deaths, I actually figure out the exact trajectory to dodge most of it. Turns out, running directly for the left side of the train car will put something between the mutant and you as soon as possible, so you only really endure one attack before getting some cover. Then you can also pass further out of the tunnel and put the locomotive between yourself and the zombified victims. That way they won't bother you either. The mutants' melee swipes are much less of a problem, especially if I just keep my distance and dance around the locomotive to keep avoiding the cranium probe. And once the big brain enthusiast drops on the ground, I'm all too happy to see the rest of the group recover and run out of the tunnel. Mostly because they can now take me directly to the science bunker and I won't have to walk myself. Herman is delighted to see the novelty paperweight and to see all his favorite boys back and alive. So he's now willing to trade with me and of course sells me the third Veles detector that I need to complete the first stage of the tempting business quest. Sure, now I'm out of any detectors myself, but that won't be for too long, you'll see. The scientist technician, who is Novikov from Clear Sky by the way, will now take some time to fiddle with the detectors, so I got some time to kill on the other side quests. For example, the other scientist in the bunker, Professor Azersky, tells me of the legendary Oasis, a place the stalkers say can heal any sickness and cure your soul of all worries. Something about it being a special place that only reveals itself to those true of heart, which would explain why nobody has found it yet. This is one of the more fascinating concepts to come out of the series, and it's actually pretty interesting to ask around the local loners about where they think the place is. But what's funny is that every stalker names a different place, and some of them are actually impossible to visit. Like, one says it's under the Pripyat Ferris wheel, and I even load up Shadow of Chernobyl to confirm that no it's not, so this one's of no help. I still have the PDA of the Traitor Duty s.t.a.l.k.e.r, so I sell it to Freedom Faction and get my permission to use anything from that pile of equipment, as if my PM-brained ass can do anything with the rifles and grenade launchers. To further keep Duncan on duty, I decide to confront a stalker named Flint over him claiming my accomplishments as his own. The full story is that the hunters back at Zaton have been recently betrayed by a stalker named Magpie, who ran off instead of helping them hunt a chimera. Talking to them about it makes this guy named Flint appear on Yanov station, and his behavior is actually kind of robust and endearing. When you first meet him, he'll be telling the whole bar a story about him blocking a controller's attack with a metal grid, which is just plausible enough that you wanna try it. But from then on, every time you stop by the Yanov station, Flint will be retelling one of your recent adventures, but wrong and with him as the main character. It's actually kind of fun to check out all the ways he gets the details wrong, so I usually keep him alive for as long as possible. Flint is Magpie, it's not even subtle, but you can't actually do anything about his shenanigans unless you revisit the giant excavator pit and find a friend of his dying in an anomaly. It's a very tragic moment as you can't even help him with a medkit and he's too far gone to get dragged to the Yanov medic even. But I can't take him seriously because the guy's name is Splinter and he's laying in the green goo, so I keep expecting him to turn into a giant rat and teach me some karate. Anyway, me telling Flint about his friend who died throws the guys off and he blurts out a lie about him besting a chimera while all the other hunters run. That is actually enough for me to go rat on him to either the Skadovsk hunters or the two faction leaders on the station. So obviously I tell on him to the Freedom Faction since I wanna make duty nice and soft to line up with the Stalker 2 canon. But that's just one kinda convoluted quest that I like. But you know what I enjoy the most? Stringing 3 different quests together to optimize and quest max. One of the bar regulars that never really leaves is Vano, a stalker down on his luck who owes some money to the mob and doesn't want to risk delivering it himself. He's actually trusting enough to just give the cash to you if you promise to deal with the situation. There's a fun mechanic here, where the bandits will demand even more money, but can't be threatened to ignore the late fees. And what determines whether it actually works is what kind of gun you are carrying on you. I could even take that route here, since you don't even need to shoot the weapon, it's enough to just have it equipped. But I have my own strategy for handling the negotiations. See, by now I have beaten 2 of the quests Trapper gives you for mutant eliminations, so now, as soon as I leave the station, Trapper will call me to say that they've tracked down the very chimera that injured him. Once I talk to him in person, I find out that during the night, the monster should show up at the ventilation complex in the southern part of the Jupiter area, which is ways away from the station, so I'm going to check out this one building on the way there. Remember, everything is something, so you might as well. This is actually a potential emission shelter, currently filled with zombies, which is not really making me believe that it works all that well as an emission shelter. But if you pass the shambling corpses and get all the way to the back of it, there's a door blocked by a breakable garbage that's of much interest to us. A few Tushkana mice are the only things blocking our way through the weird sewer pipes until we reach a corridor leading into a hall with 5 rows of pillars supporting the ceiling. Passing through it only leads to an identical corridor that once again culminates with that exact same room again. So yes, we are now stuck in a space anomaly. The solution here is to find the correct order of passing between the pillars in the room. Every row of them has one valid spot, and thankfully the correct ones get marked with white particles once you go through them once. It's not at all hard to brute force the correct combination, and unfortunately there's not a hint for it anywhere in the game. Your guess is as good as mine, especially because the combination actually is randomly generated for every new run of the game. My only real advice here is to use the debris between the pillars to identify which passages you've already tried. But once you get the combination correctly, the corridor on the other side reveals to you the fucking Oasis. Yep, it's just chilling right there, bathed in a faint light from the hole in the roof. At the center of the location, there is a sickly tree holding a bulbous fruit on its branches. Standing below the artifact does indeed restore your health and heal you of radiation poisoning. But I know full well that this thing will make for an excellent smoothie, so I grab it off the vine and bolt for the ladder out of here. Because removing the treasure makes a Psi-Dog spawn in and start flooding the place with its imaginary clones. The Heart of Oasis artifact offers a wide variety of health restoring properties, even being the only inedible item in the game to provide hunger elimination. But the price of the effect is a +4 radiation that I simply can't handle with my garbage jellyfish artifact. The most shocking property of the crystallized fruit, however, is that nobody wants it. If you offer it to Owl, Hawaiian, or even Beard, all 3 traders will question the legitimacy of the thing, or just not want to deal with a weird thing that nobody knows the properties of. My only choice is to bring it to s.t.a.l.k.e.r like I promised, so he can put it into his blender for future studies. What's more important right now, however, is that this adventure drops me off exactly at the ventilation complex where the fabled Chimera likes to do its hunting. So yes, the whole Oasis business was just another case of my everlasting quest to save myself some walking. But this would be a good moment to quickly discuss what a Chimera actually is. Described by the locals very much as a nightmare, the beast is a large 2-headed creature capable of leaping great distances and dealing a lot of damage with every swipe. With 2 of each internal organ, the monster takes a whole lot of bullets to put down, which makes it very fortunate that we are not going to actually do it. Due to how aggressive the Chimera is, it actually takes very little effort to lead it along, which is why I asked Yanov for his death quests. The bandits he owes all the money to have their base not at all far away from here, so what I do here is I lure the Chimera to their camp and watch the carnage unfold, as every gabagool in there opens fire at the Panther Lion Naked Guy monster. I of course just stand there and watch, waiting for either party to defeat the other and win their much coveted prize of getting shot by me. What I didn't account for is that the bandit national weapon is a shotgun, which is generally pretty good at taking down monsters. So the Block Post Mafia comes out doing surprisingly okay compared to what I expected. Even their bossman survives, so I have to get my hands dirty and once again put the PM pistol to work. Thankfully the mission can be completed by only killing 3 or 5 of the gang members, as long as you pick your targets. Not that I know which ones are the lot variant ones, I actually just keep shooting until the PDA beeps. That's my strategy for entirely too many of these encounters now that I think about it. Just like that, Vanov's debts have been settled, and I've cheesed my way out of another combat situation. Which is not entirely fair for this video dedicated to beating a game with one specific gun. Don't get me wrong, there is a way to avoid combat entirely and resolve everything peacefully in this game, cheating you out of even more of my suffering. But what's the fun in that? So let's make up for the easier Vano mission with a different side quest that lets you murder bandits indiscriminately. The second bandit camp in the Yanov is located in the container pile to the southwest from here. It is a much better fortified stronghold, serving as a stage for the hostage situation quest. The bandits have captured Mitai, a friend of some stalkers currently lamenting his loss at the Yanov bar. The ransom is a strong artifact or a significant sum of money. But the two can't agree how to handle the situation and are all too eager to just let me, a complete stranger, rescue their friend instead. Some amazing friends they are, I know. Nothing is technically stopping me from just storming the place, but in my experience the eradication is much easier done from the inside, so I tell their bellhop that I came here to negotiate, and like an idiot, he lets me go talk directly to their leader. Though in this case this might be perfectly justified given I am sporting the run-of-the-mill sunrise suit, and I'm armed only with the worst gun with some extra parts sticking out. Once I'm in the garage where the top dog hangs out, I act as suspiciously as I can, scouting out the most defensible spot to start my rampage. Just for the giggles, I hide in the pit under one of the trucks, and turns out I actually get a really good view from down here at the gang's leader's forehead. All hell breaks loose as soon as I open fire, and eventually I have to crawl out of my hole, if only to witness this one bandit blow himself up with a grenade. Truly, the level of artificial intelligence is staggering. The number of enemies in this base is actually pretty big. Pistol headshots help quite a bit, even if I couldn't be bothered actually aiming for them half of the time. Really, my style of combat is more focused on hitting the target into the midsection just to distract them from shooting, and then maybe adjusting my aim to finish them off. I call it playing with my food, and it 100% does not work. I'm pretty sure just killing them straight away stops them from shooting just as well, if not better. Another problem is that eventually the enemies dry up, but the location doesn't get any smaller. So somewhere in this giant container pile, there are like two guys struggling to pathfind to me. I get sick of looking for them pretty quickly, but luckily I got an idea. I return to the hostage stalker and tell him to get going, which means that now he will fail to pathfind to the bandits instead. Where's the crooks, boy? Where are they? Can you see them? Go find them, go find them, go find them! I even give the guy the strongest shotgun in the game that I kept from the previous bandit camp. He then almost immediately swaps it for a Kalashnikov, as if that's a good idea at all. Ah yes, the epic last stand of the captured stalker. How is he less efficient than me? He has the best gun in the game. Conveniently, Mitai can take me back to Yanov station, where I get my rewards for pretty much everything ever at once. Trapper, bless his heart, gives me a unique shotgun named Predator for finishing off that chimera. I am stuck with a PM, dude. The thing will collect dust in my chest till the next game, where I will also ignore it for the same exact reason. The quest marathon still hasn't killed enough time for the detector quest to ping, so I moved to Zaton in case S.t.a.l.k.e.r needs to be loaded for the mission to finish. But he still hasn't received the pimped out detectors back. On the upside, my exoskeleton is finally here, and I even have the money to pay for it. Unfortunately, just like in the previous games, you cannot run in this armor, but Cardan could upgrade it with new servo motors, so you can. The upgrade is locked behind having the tier 3 calibration tools that I can only find in the currently inaccessible Pripyat. Not that there's anyone left to fight outside of the Dead City, but I can still think of one thing I can test the bear armor against. Gonta, the Skadovsk Hunter, is still one man short for the Chimera hunt. And I even won't have to run for it, because the guys simply teleport you to it very conveniently. The beast is taking a nap at the Izumrudnoye Pioneer Camp, literally taking center stage at the further end of the location. The hunters are careful not to spook it, but I crawl all the way down there, pull out my super Makarov 9000, take aim and... well, I think you simply have to see the excitement that unfolds. So I will show you this fight without cutting in its entirety. Ready? Go!
Nicely done.
Yep, that's it. I have the power of God in my hands. I am the arbiter of doom. Through my fingers flows all-destroying ether. Seriously, what the hell did Kadan put into this gun? Jokes aside, this one Chimera is actually weaker than the usual ones, since it's supposed to have been wounded back when Gonta and Flint and crew first attempted the hunt. But even then, this is a hilariously low amount of bullets. Back at Skadovsk, S.t.a.l.k.e.r finally receives his shipment of upgraded Veles detectors, and I can pull up to get my cut of the profits. The deal, however, has fallen through, and Owl says Beard is refusing to pay his part. It seems neither of them ever spelled out the terms of the agreement, and Beard says he already paid out for the 2 of the detectors, so he's willing to just give me the 3rd one, just to shut me up. Little does he know, I am entirely not interested in their inner squabbles, and I'm only here for the improved doohickey. The Svarog detector, that's basically a Veles but capable of displaying anomalies along with the artifacts. Just for the record, the names of the detectors here are actually a really cute nod, because Veles is a Slavic pagan deity responsible for animal husbandry, whereas Svarog is a Slavic pagan deity responsible for essentially blacksmithing. Naturally, the new detector makes the rest of the game much easier and especially renders the artifact hunts a joke. But we can make it even easier if we follow up on this whole mess. See, Beard claims he could get his artifact business to the next level if only he had one of these super cool artifacts that can lead you out of any anomaly. You know the one? Compass! From the last game. This is a very curious quest, and I bet you're eager to find out where such an oddity could even come from. After all, the only person Beard knows who ever even seen the artifact is the local nutcase called Noah, a weird guy with short-term memory loss who's been prophesizing an invading wave of mutants and has built his own fortified Noah's Ark on the outskirts of the swamp. He even has his own tame pseudo-dog who lives with him and helps him guard the ship from the ever-returning Snorks. What an adventure it must be to try and find a compass in the wild and with this weirdo alongside. Well, whatever it is, you won't get it. Seriously. You come to Noah, you ask him for a compass, and he just gives it to you. This is so anticlimactic, but I can't even be mad, because it continues the tradition of missions involving the artifact being a massive disappointment. The only saving grace is this hilarious bit where you can come back immediately and ask Noah if he ever heard about a compass again, and he will give you the 2nd one without thinking twice. Asking for the 3rd one just sends him into a rage, but it's not like I have any use for it. This is still better than Clear Sky, mind you, because here the compass is actually a functional artifact. Its property of leading you out of any anomaly is realized through the compass giving you resistance to most anomalous effects, like fire, electricity or poison. I just give Beard what I promised and leave the duplicate in my stash at Skadovsk. You can't side with the bandits in this quest and bring the compass to Sultan instead, which actually provides a steady income since now every day you get your cut of the profits from the artifact business and can basically farm money by simply sleeping. But that significantly changes Beard's attitude when talking to you, and I just can't handle him not being his cheerful self. Besides, I've done every other quest on the side of stalkers, so it would be a waste. Helping Beard here actually makes Owl give you a discount, so in the long term it could even be more beneficial. Thing is, we're not doing this run in the long term. There are 2 helicopters and then a whole Pripyat left. So let's get back to it. My goal now is the one chopper at Yanov that crashed behind a southern minefield. But since I'm going that way anyway, I pop by the scientist bunker to ask for a mission. Something Herman offers here that can be a little bit of an issue is the task to put permanent artifact detectors in the Yanov anomalies. It's a struggle mostly because the bulky scanners are marked as quest items that you cannot remove from your inventory, and weigh enough to offset the fiddly balance of my backpack and tip the character into over-encumbrance. Thankfully, Herman only gives you a few at a time, and these ones are all for the anomalies vaguely on my trajectory anyway. With the Svarog detector, this is of course a breeze, even if the concrete buff anomaly at the very end is guarded by a bloodsucker. This place is actually pretty fun with how it's pretty much a tub filled with toxic sludge. There are posts sticking out of it that you can parkour on to reach the small island at the other end where the artifacts actually spawn. But since the mutant can't jump, it's pretty easy to avoid the monster by leaping down into the pool. And you don't actually have to deal with the parkour either, since the detector can make the artifact visible from all the way down here, and then a precise shot with a gun will knock it down to where you can actually grab it. There's also another anomaly nearby, hidden away on the 2nd story of the building further south. This is not a facility you can reach from the Jupiter plant proper, so it helps to take a trip here before investigating it. On top of an occasional artifact, you can find a set of advanced tools at the opposite side of the anomaly-ridden attic. So this should get me on Nitro's good side once I'm back at the base. And I want to be on his good side for this, since this helicopter actually has a surviving black box unlike any of the other ones. Now getting it is a whole thing as well, because the minefield leading up to the chopper is still very much active. You have to guesstimate a path through, hoping not to blow up. What the game doesn't really tell you here though, is that you can once again test your trajectory by throwing bolts at the ground. If the bolt lands on a mine, you'll hear a distinct click, same as in the previous games. Basic logic can work too, since there are a few landmarks across the field that you can follow. Like this dead guy right here obviously doesn't have a landmine underneath him, since he already blew up on it. Ignore for a moment that they somehow managed to bury a mine in concrete in a few places. The path back from the chopper is a little less complicated, because a herd of pigs and flashes is scripted to spawn in and rush your way once you're finished with the cutscene. It's pretty cool watching the fireworks as they blow up, though I really should be trying to memorize the path the ones that made it the furthest to. While Nitro fiddles with the innards of the helicopter, I decide to finish up my work for the scientist and take the second quest for scanner installments. The trick about this one is that both of the anomalies they want displaced at are the ones that their stalkers will take you to for their own Anomalous Research quest. So I can once again save on some walking and just tell them to escort me to the places. All I have to do in return is protect the group while they take measurements. But little did I know, this quest right here would become the most cursed experience in the entire playthrough. Getting the NPCs to teleport us to the fence swamps spawns me in directly in front of a small squad of bandits, who are neutral to me, mind you, but are aggressive towards stalkers. So they immediately attack the researcher group. The guys failed to defend themselves, so I load an earlier save and return to the stalkers with my spare shotguns. Dropping them in front of the guys makes them pick up the weapons, but that doesn't actually change much, and I still fail to protect the squad, and a couple of the guys die despite my best efforts. Now, bringing all of these boys home alive actually leads to them receiving funding and equipment and officially becoming the special research squad codenamed Spark. But I decide to cut my losses here with only 2 of them dead, which I now realize prevents most of Stalker Heart of Chernobyl from ever happening. Fucking whoops. The trip to the ash heap is not any better, as on our first attempt, a horde of zombified stalkers spawns in directly in front of us on the same hill we appear on, and deploys the firing squad maneuver before I'm even finished loading in. On a reload, the zombies pile up where they're supposed to, at the Kapachi village below the hillside. Don't get me wrong, there's still a completely unreasonable amount of them, but I can at least drop down to their level and drive them away from the science nerds. They're still very slow to actually shoot down, but whatever, I manage. At least until an exoskeleton zombie shows up, wielding a machine gun. Finally, a worthy opponent for my goddamn pea shooter. Our battle will be legendary. I actually pocket the machine gun for later, once my dying spell is over and the corpse is recorpsed again. Before the group takes me back to the bunker, I take a moment to place an anomaly scanner in the flame-ridden graveyard, and watch this one artifact completely break every single law of physics, but also breach the wall of fire at the back end of it, to enter a secluded little area above the controller tunnel from before. This is one of those things you can find if you are curious enough. Nothing really points you here within the game. In the middle of a fairly large crater lies an honest-to-god unmanned reconnaissance drone. No, this thing has nothing to do with the helicopter's mission, nor the Ukrainian military. This is a standalone thing that the stalkers will only hint at when asked about recent rumors. And even then, all they can offer is that some duty troops have reported seeing a UFO over the Yanov station. Interacting with the drone returns its black box, that I decide will make a fun toy for Nitro once he's done with his current Sudoku puzzle. And only when walking out of the bunker with my rewards do I remember that I was supposed to examine the weird anomaly over the northern ventilation complex. This is a mission you can only complete with a Svarog detector, and it's located only a stone's throw away from the ash heap graveyard. So I was in the perfect position to deal with it, and then just didn't. Well, not like I can skip the walk of shame to the complex now, as this rigmarole is of course part of my true calling, dunking on duty. When checking the new detector at the space over the complex, where all the gibberish radio chatter is coming from, we somehow trigger a space anomaly to untangle itself, and that's when General Tachenko, defector of the Ukrainian military and the legendary founder of duty, falls out of the sky along with his whole squad that disappeared. On his dead body, I find a PDA recounting the last moments of the late officer that reveal a familiar scene. The group got stuck in a space bubble, couldn't get out, and eventually died of the severe case of killing each other. I gotta admit, this is one of those spots where the international version of the voice acting is really letting the story down. The Slav variant of this scene is much more harrowing and somehow more brutal. We hear what are the last moments of a man who sure made choices with his life and may have come to regret them. It's not helped by the English dub cutting out what sounds like a very loud champagne bottle pop at the end of the recording, implying that being the sole remaining survivor, the general actually fixed that right up. Anyway, we will be giving this to the freedom leader immediately. Rip Bozo and all that. If you feel I am not the most graceful about this whole thing, you should hear what the freedomers at the bar have to say on the topic after you finish the mission. Funnily enough, this is actually the morally right thing to do, given that duty just sweeps the whole thing under the rug, given the chance. But by now, Nitro has finished decoding the helicopter black box, and it reveals that in the last moments of the flight, the mission commander has issued an order for all surviving troops to rendezvous at the one evacuation spot in Pripyat, meaning that for better or worse, we gotta stop messing around and plow our way into the dead city. It's only been what, an hour into the video and finally the plot showed up? It's almost as if Pripyat do be calling, right? The guide says that no one really knows the road to the Pripyat, but there are rumors about a transport tunnel between the city and the Jupiter factory located at Zaton. But as the UFO mission showed, no rumor in this game remains untrue, so we should probably go check out the abandoned factory, especially since that's where one of the helicopters crash landed anyway. Actually, that's why I've been avoiding visiting it up until now. The location is pretty robust and features vast swaths of nothing but walking, so if I have to go through the whole thing to check in on the crashed helicopter, I want to also grab all the documents I need from the rubble, which you can do ahead of the mission, by the way. All of the papers are already there. It's just once again more convenient to track them down when you got a quest marker leading you around. Also, the scientist wanted me to fetch some old texts from the place, so you can see I've been wrapping up for this quite a while. I even grabbed an extra detector to place at the nearby gravitational anomaly, since Professor Azorski wanted to see if their research equipment really does attract the attention of the mutants, like his half-dead stalker squad claims it does. The general theory is that the zone actively resists being known, so my task is to plop the hardware down and wait to get murdered. Sure enough, snorks start to pile up almost immediately after. My best strategy here is to crawl deeper between the whirligigs and watch as the snorks somersault themselves into the death traps. Unfortunately, this means I now have to pick up the scanner and drag it all the way through the Jupiter. The very first folder I pick up actually has nothing to do with the tunnel, and instead mentions the item 62 shipping. It must have been some important paper, since right away a squad of mercenaries phones in to promote me to worm food.
You shouldn't have come here, Stalker. Now you will be worm food.
They're really serious about their fishing like that. The mercs are actually well armed, and have at least 2 exoskeleton fighters with them. But before they can feed me to Timothy Chalamet or whatever, an emission starts and they're forced to retreat into a small room on the first story of the building. Once again, in the situation that could be easily solved with a grenade, I am forced to click on the people's heads with the least efficient and incredibly slow weapon. But it's not like the conflict can be avoided when I very much need to get into that room as well, so I won't die. At least they don't just disappear from the game like some other mercenaries I knew. The remaining document hunt leads you all around the enormous facility, entertained only by an occasional blind dog. The helicopters in the control room are guided by the psi dogs, but the helicopter blades themselves serve as a pretty good spot to shoot at the mutants from. It's still a significant hurdle thanks to the pistol's fire rate and the lower damage, but come on, it's just a psi dog, so nothing too exciting. The gist of it all is that there is indeed a direct tunnel from the factory and to the Pripyat underground. But the entrance has been sealed and the tunnel itself was filled with toxic gas. Nitro is sure he can still force the service elevator to descend into the tunnel, but says we'll need the special rebreather suits to live through the gas. He recommends I talk to Zulu, a duty sniper living in the lookout tower, to form more of a plan and a squad to go with me. And I really like the mission to talk to him, except here's the thing. I fucking hate the mission to talk to him! Let me explain. The whole talk with the guy is just you two getting drunk in his bedroom. But it's made much better because through this conversation you get a chance to bring up every single accomplishment you've made this far. Find a way to Pripyat? Dude, I found the Oasis. Mutants and anomalies? I cleared out the whole Bloodsucker Lair back in Zaton. Form a squad? Dude, you can't trust anyone here. Let me tell you about this Flint guy. And not only is there a special flavor text for the player character bragging about the cool missions you've done, Zulu also has replies scripted for each one, and you basically just sit there celebrating your cool successes. None of these actually go anywhere, but it's a really fun moment where you can look back and admire all the things that you've done for this community. Except every time you tell Zulu literally anything, he will interrupt the conversation and play the animation of him slowly pulling a vodka bottle from under his ass and glitching it through his chin and taking a sip. He will then shake his head and put the vodka away. He really is not in any hurry, and he does it for every line you say. So even if you are not here to read through the funny optional text, you will still have to sit here feeling yourself age through multiple times he does this. Not only is this an unskippable cutscene, it's the same unskippable cutscene 5 times in a row, and I have zero patience for it. The conversation doesn't amount to much anything anyway. We already know that we need a group and that we need a suit, and that there's probably Pripyat on the other side. This whole thing could have been an email. Right, so about that squad. There are 3 extra stalkers you can recruit to help with the suffocating trip. One of them is Vano, whose recruitment mission we have already completed by simply killing off the bandits he owed money to. He still needs 5,000 rubles to finish paying out for his Seva suit, but that's actually exactly the amount of money he originally gave you to pay to the bandits, so it all works out. Another easy mark is Sokolov, a military pilot wasting his time hiding at the scientist bunker. He's not too eager to reunite with his superiors, but the real trick is providing him with the closed respiratory system suit. For some reason you can't just buy one for him, but luckily the ecologists have some laying around. You just gotta convince them to share one, maybe in exchange for a rare specimen. Professor Azersky points you towards a special flower growing in the middle of an anomaly not too far from their bunker. Getting to the plant is child's play, but picking it actually triggers many more anomalies to appear around you, so walking out is much scarier, as long as you have the s.t.a.l.k.e.r detector on hand. Otherwise, chances are you will walk out of the anomalous shrubs without even noticing. This actually creates a new spawning spot for chemical type artifacts, so this death trap can really come in handy. While shaking up the eggheads for their equipment, I also offer to find them new gods, given that the mercenaries they had in employ up until now have disappeared completely after attacking me. I of course relay the contract to Freedom, hoping that the second-hand smoke from their campfires will maybe make Herman into less of an asshole. My friendship with Freedom actually comes in handy here, since the discount offered by their trader Hawaiian now allow me to buy a Seva suit at a lower price than at Nimble's. And also I will need good relations with one of the factions for the sake of my final ally, Strider. Yes, this is the same Strider from the Heart of Chernobyl game, though he could have fooled me since I swear he shed 2 skin tones between the games. Strider is the leader of a squad mumbling about in a swamp near the bandit-infested crates. The stalkers wearing bizarre greyish-green armor call you over for a chat, and their disoriented demeanor soon explains itself. They are Monolithians, a rogue squad of monolith fighters now cut off from the big voice in their head, confused and with barely any memories from their past. They wish no harm to the locals, but are essentially sitting ducks in case somebody stumbles upon them. The player has to take a risk and consult with the Yanov inhabitants on what to do with them. The only 2 options are to convince either Freedom or Duty to accept them into their ranks, but understandably, they won't take any chances with them unless the player has already established a relationship with the group, as if trusting Degtyaryov personally makes this decision any less insane. Since Duty at this point is bordering on sending a hit squad in my name, I get the Green Boys to recruit the new friends, but I then snatch their best guy for myself, especially since he already has the fart filtering outfit for the trip. And with that, the whole squad is ready and eager to descend into the depths and fight my way to Pripyat. Degtyaryov, please, put on a helmet. Dude, I am begging you, I spent so much money on that suit. Very optimistic about the whole thing, we crack the vault doors open and make our way through the dim tunnel. Until the very first snork ambush happens, and the whole squad is easily folded by the mutants. Hey, how come they're still alive down here? Does toxic gas only affect bloodsuckers? Or are the gas masks they're wearing still functional somehow? On another attempt, I make sure to bring the machine gun from before and an extra shotgun to drop in front of my personal army, and to their credit, they actually pick them up and even shoot them a couple of times. I also bring my exoskeleton, as it still works perfectly fine in some parts of the tunnel. This turns out to be a waste of my time, since regardless of my efforts, the same Snork ambush takes out my boys one after another. I'll spare you the multiple additional attempts at protecting my friends, since I actually really like keeping all 4 of the guys alive till the end. What's happening here might seem like bad luck, but the truth is, the game was rigged from the start. You see, getting every possible squad mate for this mission grants the player the leader achievement. This is once again an in-game thing, exclusive to every run, and much like the one of ours or detective, this one has an effect on the in-game events. What it's meant to do is make all your teammates significantly more resistant to damage, but for one reason or another, this achievement does the exact opposite. Without the rest of the gang, Zulu can easily handle most of the tunnel on his own, but if everyone is here to help, all 4 of them get taken out by the first rat they meet. Zulu and Strider are the first to kick the bucket, rendering even more of STALKER 2 completely unplayable. This leaves me only with Sokolov and Vano, but at least both of them now have machine guns since I give Sokolov the one Zulu had. That only helps a little, and he logs off as soon as we reach the dome structure at the end of the tunnel, where we're attacked by the monolith forces. While I run around trying to press the right buttons to open the passage further, Vano 2 eats his last bullet. I don't like all of them dying here, but at the very least without them I can skip fighting the rest of the troops and move forward through the final zombie-infested sewer. Finally, on my lonesome, I reach the ladder to what seems like a manhole, and the game crashes violently, unable to continue. Okay, not actually, but like, imagine. Thing is, a widely spread pirated version of the game was based on a leaked pre-build that would consistently crash at this exact moment. Which feels almost intentional, because this is probably the cruelest spot you can interrupt the plot. And keep in mind, this game was widely distributed in the Slav spaces, where getting licensed software is not just expensive, but incredibly tricky. You could buy a legit looking disc from a legit looking store only to discover a good dozen hours into the game that you don't have permission to enter the hall. Luckily we're playing on the Steam copy, and clever as Valve can be, they're not clever enough to sell me a forgery. So after messing around for entirely too long, Major Dekhterev makes it into the streets of Pripyat, only to get apprehended by the very military he's been looking for this entire time. Honestly surprised they haven't starved to death in the meantime. Now, if you made it here with any of your squad mates, they're supposed to all react very shocked to the fact that Dekhterev works for Ukrainian armed forces. But since none of my friends are here, the game just leaves this prolonged silent pause where those cutscenes should be, before the military takes him back to the headquarters. The army base is a sad tiny laundromat on the edge of the town. The resources are low, they don't have many men left, and they can't convince the HQ to evacuate them. But they do give you free bullets and medicaments. Similarly, the army technician will fix your apparel for free, though he's not one for the upgrades. We also get to meet Colonel Kowalski, the leader of the expedition, or as I like to call him, voice acting.
What the hell? You be careful out there, okay? And Major, keep me posted.
Yeah, the rest of the English dub is not too stellar either, but the French accent Kowalski has equipped makes me straight up sad. The Slav dub of the character is not like super good, but in places it really works and actually conveys a sense of authority as well as a certain exhaustion. On the other hand, none of his dialogue is straight up warm food. Following in the footsteps of Shadow of Chernobyl, the game doesn't let me leave Pripyat, at least not until I deal with the next mission. The army is trying to ambush a monolith squad in hopes of getting their hands on the unidentified weapon they suspect was used to shoot down their helicopters. A small force of the cultists is expected to pass through the abandoned hospital nearby, and the colonel asks me to escort the troops in lieu of, well, anyone else really. They're kinda struggling for personnel down here. The commanding officer dispatches a sniper onto the building not taller than a nearby tree, then asks me to assume a position in the left wing of the hospital. Since he hasn't even bought me a dinner first, I politely decline assuming any positions and go into the right side of the facility, having dropped off my machine gun to one of the other soldiers. Inside, I find a larger force of the monolith fighters doing their wobbly praying animation as if s.t.a.l.k.e.r hasn't shut down their big talking rock. Guys, you are just doing neck exercises, aren't you? But this isn't the squad Colonel warned us of. These are the reinforcements for the counter-ambush the monoliths planned for us. But I'm not trying to take them out to help with the mission. I'm steering the hornet's nest to make the scripts go faster. Once the shooting officially starts, a figure rises on the roof of the tallest building, and their voice fills the air with a prayer to the monolith. Yeah, scream all you want, it can't hear you, it's dead. My goal then is to get a good vantage point and take the guy out, if only to get them to shut up. The small passage between the two wings of the building gets the angle, but the effective range of the pistol is so far removed that I decide to look around again, even if it involves fighting off more of the grunts. Luckily, you can get all the way on top of the roof of the right wing of the building and snipe off the preacher before he can snipe you off. Because yes, the unidentified weapon the military thinks shot down their helicopters is the 800 ruble Gauss rifle. In fact, first thing the preacher does once he appears is take out the sniper that we installed on that poor excuse of a vantage point. Shooting the preacher down is scripted to make him fall down onto the underpass, dropping his weapon to be picked up by the player. And with that, the mission is finished, and I better rush back to the laundromat. Out of the 4 soldiers that came with me, only one survives the encounter, judging by the distinct machine gun he has equipped. I let him keep it, since I don't need any extra weight on my person, now that the Gauss rifle has become a quest item and cannot be dropped. Mind you, the exoskeleton prevents running anyway, so we're not losing much mobility here. Back at the laundromat, it's also excitement, since who else would show up but Gary, the stalker I helped all the way back in the scientist bunker. Turns out he did in fact find a way to Pripyat, independently of us, since the tunnel elevator is supposed to have shut down after our mission. He will now serve as my guide between Yanov and Pripyat. For me helping earlier, Gary even rewards me with a bubble artifact, meaning I can finally start using other ones thanks to the -4 radiation it adds. Also, Kowalski tells me something about a missing recon unit that sounds urgent, but obviously I got more important things to do. The Gauss rifle has fallen from a significant height and became too damaged to actually use. Local master has no idea what end of this weapon is supposed to shoot, so we'll have to ask the other 2 guys we know whether they can fix it. And since we'll be visiting Kardan anyway, might as well grab a souvenir for him from the convenience store. We're going to get the calibration tools for either mechanic. I cannot tolerate the walking speed any longer. As if to mock me, the one service center I can visit for the equipment seems to be on the other side of the city. As I approach, I see a pseudo-dog land on the ground and I have no idea where it got launched from. So, fun anomalies they have here in Pripyat. Squeezing past the anomalies leads to the 2nd floor, where I can just about see a Burer idly navigating the shelves, seemingly shopping. I actually managed to sneak by him without getting noticed and successfully make my way into the small storage room where he has a few trinkets stashed up. Along with the expert level tools, I find there a brand new Makarov pistol. Since the mutant is clearly a connoisseur of gun, I decide to leave him alive and just leave the building. After all, I am not mentally equipped right now to fight a Burer who also has a gun. Looking for the other set of tools, I genuinely get lost and walk into the bookstore where monolith fighters are praying to one of their jerry-rigged antennas. This is actually a later mission, but I cleanse the grounds all the same. I genuinely have no idea why these people are still fighting. If Strider and crew managed to break their programming, then so should have these guys. And since this game confirms the hardest ending of Shadow of Chernobyl as canon, there is neither the monolith nor sea consciousness to still command them. You can say maybe the proximity to the center of the zone has kept them hypnotized, but Strider can move to the Pripyat laundromat and will do just fine, so that's bunk. I guess they're just remnants of a truly dead fanbase, simping for a VTuber who has long stopped streaming. Either way, gun go boom. Eventually, my method of just kinda stumbling around brings me to old department store. The insides of the building consist of a maze of identical looking rooms leading through identical looking doors. The wiki insists that this is not a space anomaly, so I guess me constantly getting lost in here is just a me thing. The trick here is to follow the Tushkana mice running through the rooms. Opening door after door for them will lead you into the basement and then into an anomaly infested tunnel that might have an artifact or 2 for you. But the tools are actually located only midway there, and I usually completely forget to pick them up and just run further down. Joke's on you, this flab earns me another bubble, so I can be extra protected from the radiation. With my technicians now at their strongest, I travel to Kardan and get him to enable warp speed on my exoskeleton. Naturally, for his hard work, he deserves a nap, so I show him the broken Gauss rifle, and the guy is so shocked to see it, he faints.
62? That's impossible.
Turns out, back before all the anomalies exploded, Kadan was a technician on the Jupiter plant where they were developing an electromagnetic gun. Item 62 was specifically the so-called Gauss rifle, so that's the document the mercenaries were trying to get back on the plant. Kadan says he could fix it if he had proper documentation for the device. Apparently the version he worked on stopped development back in 2004, much like this freaking game series. They simply never figured out the strong enough power source for the gun. My thinking is C Consciousness managed to bypass that issue by employing electric type artifacts, but we never really get a confirmation. Thankfully, Kadan still has a keycard to a nearby facility where the project was tested. I won't even have to leave Zaton for this, since the laboratory is just below the Iron Forest anomaly cluster. The place is filled with zombified stalkers, who are not much of a threat even with one of them wielding a machine gun. The real treat is further down, where the shooting range for a bigger prototype is occupied by a roaming pseudo-giant, the first one in this game. This battle is actually completely optional. You can't climb over the catwalk and into the vent above the room without ever engaging the creature. Except that, no it isn't, shut up. I've beaten a pseudo-giant with a pistol in every one of these videos, I'm not gonna give up now. Trying to time my jumps to the monster's aerial attacks doesn't help much, and most of the time I receive the full force of the wind burst. This is not helped by my trying to stay up close to the creature in hopes that blasting its face will work at least a little bit better than just generally blasting it, I guess. But with the master difficulty, even essentially stapling the bullets into its mug took the short side of forever. An easy win here obviously would be just sniping the monster from the catwalks, but where's the fun in that? Once this chicken breast with legs finally croaks, I ascend into the vents above and drop on the other side of the blast shield, where a massive version of the Gauss rifle appears to still be plugged into the wall. With the design documents, Kadan can now fix the Gauss rifle to where a player can actually use it, and a regular player should want to use it, since completing this mission makes it so pseudo-giants can spawn across the Jupiter area. Thankfully, we won't be spending much time exploring there, since I have basically finished every side quest in the game, except for maybe 2 and 1 special cave in Zaton. But forget about that. Kadan applies the final upgrade to my PM pistol. Render it truly the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. You can tell because we did just destroy a mass. The whole missions only proves that the helicopters that had their control panels fried were definitely not shot down by the unidentified weapon, because the electromagnetic rifle doesn't shoot actual electric magnets. This unfortunately is almost the only Pripyat mission that actually furthers the plot, as most of the mandatory military operations are dedicated to fighting the monolith and locating corpses of your comrades. This next bit is a clear example of that, as Kowalski asked us to find his missing recon unit, and we only get there to find a few dead soldiers. Usually this leads into wiping out the bookstore, but since we've already addressed the more literate monolithians, we only get the mission to find the surviving sentry in a nearby store. The guy is frenzied and randomly shooting around himself, including in my general direction. Not that I blame him. Turns out, he's only like this because he is being controlled by a controller. But since this is a mouse and keyboard household, I quickly explain to the mutant that he is not welcome here, and unfortunately, your reaction speed here does not help the sentry at all. That guy dies no matter how this mission goes. Really, the tasks you do for the military serve to drive home the oppressive feeling of doom within the quiet and dangerous dead city. But even then, the large but empty Pripyat area feels like a disappointment after how packed with interesting stuff Zaton and Yanov were. A welcome change to that is the next mission, the descent into the X8 lab. And you know me, I'm a sucker for a good lab descent. So trust me when I say, this here is one of the best missions in S.t.a.l.k.e.r. Call of Pripyat, even if it does house the most unfair bullshit in the whole game series. The gist of it is, we gotta fetch some papers from the lab under one of the city buildings. How is Pripyat not collapsing on itself, with how many labs, tunnels and facilities the series places under it, is anyone's guess. But before we can even get into the place, we have to navigate a whole building full of enemies. The entrance into the secret facility is accessed by taking the regular elevator down from the first floor. Luckily, a random mercenary explorer has already rigged the lift to a backup generator before promptly kicking the bucket right next to it. We just need to turn it on. This is the mech's main goal in the city, to get into the labs and steal whatever information they can find for their mysterious benefactor. Who would that be? No idea. The game never tells you, nor does it really matter. The mercenary plot truly goes nowhere, For all intents and purposes, they're just monolithians but colored blue. Avoiding the zombies on the lower floor is fairly easy, but on higher levels, they're replaced with more monolith fanatics to kill. Thankfully, they seem much less durable than the bullet sponge tanks from the first game. The stairways in the building are collapsed in such a way that you will have to travel through every floor, meeting every ambush. And for a random lab holding sacred knowledge, this is a ridiculous amount of guards. Especially because they are actually guarding all of the floors that the secret entrance is not on. Up top, I locate the fabled backup generator, and as I flick it on, an honest-to-god mission begins. This is of course a problem that solves itself, since the building I'm in very much counts as an emission shelter. But get this, for some reason the lab underneath doesn't. So as soon as I load into what's essentially a bunker, I die to weather. The elevator itself up in Pripyat counts as cover, but the laboratory does not. Unwilling to wait for the storm to pass, I down an antibiotic drug that I've been carrying for this exact situation, and wake up groggy a full blowout later. Overall, this location functions much like a cement factory in Yanov. There's multiple points of interest, all guarded by mutant activity, and you technically can give up and leave after grabbing the first one. But once you pick up all 6, the mission in your PDA will change from look for more documents or leave to specifically just leave the laboratory. So that's what we're waiting for here. The easiest grab is the folder in the room patrolled by a ball lightning anomaly. Every other place is protected by mutants. What helps to do here is get up into the central room and go up the ladder into a secret opening by the ceiling. The place has a spare machine gun lying around, which obviously I can't use, but it's also where the annoying poltergeist live that's responsible for throwing stuff at you pretty much across the whole facility. Dealing with it right away saves me a lot of headache, and God knows I get enough objects thrown at me here because, well, Burers. Without beating around, here's what I'm sure all of you have been looking forward to. With only the upgraded PM, I'm going to tackle the secret room with 3 Burers. This area is only accessible by climbing the second elevator shaft in the lab and is notorious for being entirely too difficult. There's 2 documents to pick up here. One in the main room with 2 mutants, and another in the smaller room with another mutant. And given I've already told you every attack these creatures can pull, you can probably imagine how easily 3 of them can juggle a player. The best strategy is to only engage one at a time, have something to break line of sight, and of course, have fun and be yourself. Here's my favorite hiding spots for this fight. The initial door frame that the Burers never approach, but also can't fit any of their throwables through, the fall trap under the main room with toxic anomalies that I like to call the shame pit, and a smaller room upstairs that offers a good view over the rest of the battleground and has only one downside. There is another Burer in there. Special shout out goes to the orange cylinder in the center that I find myself circling entirely too much to try and block off a life drain charge from one of the enemies. Weirdly, my most successful attempt was the one where 2 of the mutants end up themselves hiding in the upper room, and I just sat on the stairway leading to it because the railings on it bounced off any debris that they were levitating my way. And of course it goes without saying that the pistol damage is not very anything at all. I actually rolled back all the footage from this fight to see how many bullets I have before and after, so I know for a fact I have shot the gravitational trio at least 205 times. It's barely a third of my ammo supply, mind you, but it's still a substantial number. There is one more great encounter in the cafeteria of the lab, where the player will hear a child crying from behind a toilet door. Opening it to investigate will reveal another Burer, who is supposed to be the one imitating the noise. And while the idea of Burers being able to mimic noises has been apparently in the design documents since before Shadow of Chernobyl, this is the one single time in the entire franchise that the creature actually does this. So the picture this incident paints is less that the mutants are crafty this way, and more that this one Burer can inexplicably do this. Ah, they told him training to cry like a toddler was a waste of time, but look at him now! Look at him at 60 degrees for some reason after dying. What is happening down here? Finally, having collected all of the Slenderman's pages, I can leave the accursed Burer-infested place, if not for the controller scripted to appear for this exact situation. Jokes on him, not only have I got a moonlight artifact with me to prevent the Psy fiddling, I also now know the secret power of a set of stairs, and can pretty easily shoot him without repercussion. The controller himself seems to get stuck at the top of these, and the angle between us lines up just so that I can see his head, and really, that's all of him I need to be seeing. After the day I had with the Burers, this is a delightfully stupid fight. Coming back to report my findings, I am stopped by Gary, who's been spooked and shooken. On his way here, he eavesdropped on a group of mercenaries who mentioned meeting up with their client's messenger in the hotel courtyard not far from here. I thought I have done everything in my power to make this quest not appear here, but apparently it happens no matter if you took the fun zombie vacation with Uncle Yar or not. The trick about this mission is all in the title. One shot. The player gets taken to a room overlooking the meeting place and given a sniper rifle to use on either the client's messenger or the mercenary leader. It is possible to kill off both of the targets, and the community even came up with some hilarious ways to do that. Me? I can't beat this mission at all, since my pistol barely shoots far enough to take out one of the guards closest to my hiding spot. So I just open fire to scare the whole squad away. The only consequence this flop will cause is that I get the bad ending slide for the mercenary presence in Pripyat, and a few squads of them will appear in key spots across the city, which is of no bother to me because there's barely anything left to do here in the first place. And with this mission finished, Kowalski personally calls me in for a talk eye to eye, which I am especially not a fan of because his voice acting sucks.
This operation has been getting more ridiculous every minute since the helicopters crashed. We've got no comms with HQ.
You've got no what with HQ? Actually, never mind, please don't answer that. The talk really just establishes that the whole operation has went to shit. The army is no closer to figuring out what crashed their choppers, and until they do, they won't be sending any more. The personnel is either dead or depressed, and now the communication with the HQ went belly up thanks to weird interference they picked up. At the very least, they located the source, but the squad that left for it is not responding either. And the joke is, he's right, but he has no idea. There is one ending slide about the fate of the Pripyat city, and it depends on the amount of troops that survive till the end of the game. And since most of his squad dies in scripted deaths for most of the missions, the only times my actions as a player actually count are the bookstore shootout and the abandoned hospital mission. So the two guys who died in the Gauss rifle fire have locked me into the bad ending already. And that was the first mission that plays out as soon as I entered Pripyat. The game truly was rigged from the start. The only quest spot I haven't already gone through is the daycare, where I find another squad of dead soldiers and an explosive device they were planning to use to breach the building. Naturally, I do it in their memory and explore the abandoned garden of Banban, dealing with a couple of poltergeists that live in it. At the furthest end of the place, I find another antenna much like the ones Monolithians pray to. This turns out to be the device that's been jamming the communication with the military headquarters. And also where I hit a bit of a hurdle. When planning this video, I completely forgot about this mission, and I distinctly remember now that opening fire at the device doesn't actually do anything. Instead, every time I played this before, I would always blow it up with a grenade, which is very satisfying and gets the job done in one throw. So, for a moment, I am genuinely scared here that the whole run will be unsuccessful over the most minor of things. Just to be sure, I decide to not give up until I have emptied my gun at the thing. And surprisingly, this actually works. Seems like just aiming a little bit lower is what did the trick, since the emitter needs to drop to the ground floor, where it shatters and opens up a passage to a noisy refrigerator. Turns out the doctor from the laundry base somehow got stuck in this fridge, probably led here by the psi wobbling. Talking to him teleports us back to the base, where I am informed that Gary has left the station to resupply, meaning I am now stuck in Pripyat, and we're now in the end game. With the interference gone, the whole group panics as they find a signal from a stalker rapidly approaching the laundromat. The player is dispatched to follow it, but can't actually find anything there. And I'll save you the 3 times in a row that the game pulls this. You just eventually come back to the base empty-handed, and the signal turns out to be none other than s.t.a.l.k.e.r. He was traveling through the underground passages, so the whole time he was just below the player. We won't get to see those passages though, there are no more cool underground labs in this game. In fact, all of the other ones are also just reworked assets originally developed but not finished for Clear Sky. A game where you also pointlessly chase s.t.a.l.k.e.r. for an extended amount of time. The stalker explains that he comes in peace, and is all too happy to tell the army professionals exactly why their helicopters landed the way they did. Every chopper that had the electronics blow out has simply crashed into an airborne anomaly in the zone's sky. The military had a map of anomalous areas, but failed to account for them moving after the emission. An explanation that's so fucking stupid, it genuinely hurts to think about it. The fact that anomalies change locations after an emission passes, at least within the lore, is a fact so basic and so easily observable that the military that has presence all over the territory had no way of not knowing about it. Hell, while they're not really occupying the center of the zone, the scientists here work for the same government as the military does. At some point somewhere, someone must have asked one of the stalkers about how the zone works, especially since they got people like Gary and the S.t.a.l.k.e.r group who straight up work for the government with their scientist contracts. Hell, Degtyaryov himself could have told them, because I know for sure he survived multiple blowouts, because I'm the one pressing the buttons to make him survive multiple blowouts. I'm sorry, I love this game so much, but the main plot is just so stupid. While we wait for the emission to pass, I give s.t.a.l.k.e.r 2 of the notes I found in the group's stashes, which is what the drone black box was supposed to reveal. The 3 stashes of his group from before all of them died. This actually increases his health pool and he gives you some artifacts in exchange. Just in case, I also grab a fresh unupgraded Makarov pistol, so I can use the default 8mm ammo that most enemies drop. You know, this game is the first one in the series to let you use whatever guns you want in your 2 gun slots. And here I am using both for the same pistol. Finally, we establish connection with the Ukrainian FBI and beg them to send us an Uber or something. A helicopter departs for a square on the other side of the town, and the whole team lines up for the evacuation. And that's where I realize a single grenade could easily solve the situation. The HQ won't have trouble evacuating anyone if there is no one to evacuate. So for the first time in my life ever, I tune my gun onto the squad and absolutely annihilate the remaining survivors. Much as I can with my limited arsenal. The 6 guys we have left in the laundromat go down pretty easily, as somewhere out there s.t.a.l.k.e.r sheds a tear knowing that I finally completed his mission to kill s.t.a.l.k.e.r. While I stand there laughing at how horrible s.t.a.l.k.e.'s picture looks in his inventory, the rescue rangers phone in to tell me that they won't wait around forever anymore and will leave in exactly 1 minute from now if I'm the only one left. I try and still make the timer, but I miss them by just a moment, and I'm the only one to watch the helicopters leave. In theory, I should be able to just ask Gary to escort me out of the zone now and trigger the ending, but the laundromat doors simply won't open as if there were enemies nearby. Maybe the stalkers simply consider me an enemy, and honestly I wouldn't blame them. But regardless, I am now soft-locked and can't actually finish the game. Proving that no, you can't beat co-op. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Let's just load the save. Loading back in, I decide to not do the stupid but funny thing and actually follow my teammates to the choppers, letting the NPCs walk right into a chimera that usually spawns on the abandoned hospital and get easily taken down. Next try, we don't meet the amazing leaping monster, but we do encounter a rare levitating snork. No idea what's happening there, but, you know, anomalies. All things considered, we barely encounter any enemies on the way, except for the large monolith force at the very end, though I just do as instructed by the Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and get to the chopper to more or less wait out until the game decides enough monolith blood was spilled, which is when the rest of the squad arrives and we roll out into a cutscene of the helicopters leaving the dead city. I decide to stay in the zone for a moment, simply curious as to whether the laundromat base will now let me in, and it does, Gary happily escorting me out of the zone and into the ending slideshow. Since we have done basically every quest we can, we see Skadovsk prosper, Yanov is taken over by Freedom, Kardan quits drinking and starts a repair station with Nitro, while s.t.a.l.k.e.r gets to live out his days at a cushy science job until I fucking get him in Stalker 2. Don't think you got away scot-free, guy. I'm coming for you in the next game. Also, the game makes sure to rub it in that every person I brought with me on Pripyat 1 expedition died a painful death and won't even be remembered. But at the end of the day, all that matters is yes, you can't beat Call of Pripyat with only the PM pistol. Much as I might complain about the tail end of the plot, ultimately I have to admit that this game is genuinely my favorite one out of the original 3 Stalker games. Where Shadow of Chernobyl had the main plot progression locked in a lot of ways it felt like a railroady shooter that doesn't really lend itself to what this series does best, letting the player explore the unique and messed up environment of the zone. In that way, Call of Pripyat gave us a world we can take at our own pace, where the choices matter and every side quest is a unique and exciting adventure. It also in a few spots had to actually explain the plot of the previous games, which I'm sure helped a lot of the people to get into the series. I sure would recommend anyone pick up this game, just maybe play it with a better gun.